Hello, my gelflings. It's Lore. Hi, good morning. So I've made a couple videos already. I have not posted any of them because I need to make an intro video that basically is going to explain who I am, why I'm on a spiritual recovery, and why the fuck you should put any merit in what the hell I'm saying. So I'm gonna open up a little bit of space for some like intro slide or something like that. Okay, so getting into who I am and what brought me to this spiritual journey, and then finally, what is the spiritual journey? So who am I? My name is Lore. I'm gonna be 29 this month. I am a resident of Portland, Oregon, but as you can see, I am not there. I'm actually in Venice, Florida right now. And I've been here visiting my mother for about 2.5 months because when I was in Portland, I was getting very depressed. I was depressed about a lot of things. The really major thing that was fueling a lot of my depression was the relationship I was in. So last year I got involved with this guy who was a client at my job. And I knew it was wrong. I knew he was bad news, but for some reason, I just could not resist this guy. So the city got locked down for COVID, and then shortly after that, the job found out that I was fucking the client. And then, cause and effect, lost the job. And pretty much the only person I was being exposed to during the months that we were locked down was this guy. So because the relationship was really abusive, I was really cut off from the outside world. So when you think about like relationship dynamics, there's, a honeymoon phase where things are really, really great. They're wonderful. And then things kind of slowly dive down into a darker period. And then for me, I would always be like, well, get out of my house. I don't want you here. And then he'd be gone. And then I'd be depressed and lonely. And then he would come back and the cycle would resume. Now, before I met this guy and before I had my awesome job, I was actually experiencing a different low about 2 or 3 years ago when I was kind of just drifting all over the country, didn't really belong anywhere. I was using a lot of drugs, and eventually I hit a bottom where I decided to ask for help. Now, this was like 2 or 3 years ago, and it was before I settled down in Portland. But long story short, I ended up going into treatment. I moved to Portland where I really didn't know anyone and I just needed to start over. And then right when I moved to Portland, the guy I was dating at that time passed away. So I was hit with like a major whammy. And as you can see, I survived. In fact, I did really, really well. It was that I could take the energy from my grief and use that to drive my recovery forward. Now, at the time, I got really involved with the sober community because I thought drugs were my problem. Drugs were also the thing that resulted in my partner's death. So I had gotten really involved in the recovery community and ended up getting a really awesome job. And then I met the next dude, the crazy one, and the rest is history. The reason I bring up what happened so long ago is so that you might be able to understand that this is not the first time that I've experienced a really big low, and this isn't the first time that I've needed to lean into some type of recovery program in order for me to walk through my depression and survive. But the difference between when I first moved to Portland and my boyfriend passed away and 2 years later, when I was already living in Portland, depressed, alone in my apartment during a national pandemic with an abusive boyfriend, was that I was starting to realize that drugs were not actually the source of my problem. The majority of my childhood, I was raised with a mother who was very mentally ill, and I ended up taking care of her really, really often, and also taking care of my younger sister. So the psychological effect that this had on me was to believe that in order to properly love someone, they would have to be in a state of absolute turmoil. And they would need me to swoop in, save them, lift them up, pour my energy into them, and then when they get better, they will rescue me and love me. So to summarize that, basically what I just said was that I need to find a sick person, fix them, and then they will fix me. Now, this has like a really, really fucked up effect because I'm 29 years old and I'm just figuring out that this is the way that I show love and affection to other people. And really, the way that we show love and affection to other people is the way that we show love and affection to ourselves. So by me believing that I can only find a very broken, very sick person to fix in order to love them, in a way, I also need to be very sick and very broken in order to be loved, which is why I gravitated towards drugs. Don't get me wrong, I love drugs, but really what I love is to escape and to display myself in a way that looks very broken because that seems attractive to people who might rescue me. But it never really works out that way. What ends up happening is that I locate a sick person, pour all of my energy into them, get totally drained, and then I need love. So what do? I gravitate towards drugs or other self-destructive behaviors in order for someone to swoop in and save me. Obviously, nobody is getting an adequate amount of love here. Usually, I just end up very much alone and very much trying to escape from my feelings of worthlessness and rejection. Now, this isn't like some conscious attention-seeking behavior. This was legitimately going on a subconscious level. I didn't really realize this was what I was doing. At the time, all I knew was that I was alone in my apartment, my boyfriend was crazy, and that my life was going nowhere, and no one was ever going to love me, and I might as well just end it all. Bleak as fuck, man. I hate myself. I hate my life. So I came to Florida and the weather was beautiful and the sun was shining and there was no rain and it was really, really awesome, except my destructive behavior had still not gone away. What the fuck? It basically felt like I was backed into a corner and that I just could not escape this ultimate problem, which was myself. But one thing that I knew had worked for me at one point was a 12-step program, because after my boyfriend had passed away, I had worked that 12-step program around his death and around my drug problem. But when I came here and started doing some work, I realized that the problem wasn't necessarily drugs. The problem was my gravitation towards destructive relationships and the relationship that I have with loving myself. So I decided to take a different perspective on the 12 steps and I started working them from a woman's perspective. I also gave myself some extra homework by trying to dive deeper into trusting myself again. Because in destructive relationships, we are gaslit so often that it is really, really difficult for us to find the truth in pretty much anything. So I started to take a lot of initiative to finding the truth, specifically resonating with my inner truth and what the fuck it means to trust yourself. So a combination of working the 12 steps from a woman's perspective, and then also doing a lot of independent research, reading a lot of books, actually taking the information and putting it into critical practice. So some books that have been helping me with this are Trust Your Vibes by Sonia Choquette, Warrior Goddess Training, and The 4 Agreements. And all of those might seem really small, but I'm also taking a lot of snippets and lectures from other spiritual teachers. And it's not that I'm just reading these things, I'm actively putting them into practice. Additionally, with all of this pen to paper and critical practice work, I'm also going to recovery meetings. Now, while I said before, drugs and alcohol were not exactly my problem, but they continued to feed into the destructive behavior. They were just sort of a symptom of the bigger problem. It is important for me to stay away from prescription painkillers, alcohol, and street drugs. Now, I'm not including CBD or THC or psychoactive herbs. My perspective of those things is that they are not there to be abused. They are there to act as a medicine. I am going to make another video about 12-step recovery programs for people who are recreational users or medicinal users, because I think that there's a lot of bad stigma around that, and I don't think it's fair for somebody to deny themselves such an incredible spiritual program simply because they smoke weed. My spiritual recovery program is really eclectic, which means that I'm really taking all of this information and trying to put a spin on it in which all of this information will apply to me. Now, that's really hard to do because if I'm struggling with trusting myself, or I'm struggling with being honest with myself, or I'm struggling at taking a critical perspective of my life, it can be really difficult to decipher what information applies to me and what information doesn't. As I'm practicing, I'm starting to gain a lot more trust and understanding, and I'm also finding a lot of truth in this information as it applies to me. And so that's basically what this channel is about. Originally, I wanted to make videos just to document my own journey for myself. But after I recorded my first video, I realized, oh, this might be information that other people might find helpful too. So that's why I'm creating the channel. Now, what you can expect in this channel is a very subjective experience on my spiritual recovery. And maybe some of the things that I do resonate with you, but I guarantee not all of them will, because we're all different. One thing that I think is really, really important to remember is just because you don't want to do something doesn't mean it's not going to help you. Because really, spiritual recovery is a lot of fucking work, and most of it involves doing shit that you don't feel like doing. And as I've gotten into this practice, something that I've realized is what my inner truth truly means. And the majority of that is shit that my ego doesn't resonate with. So a couple of things you can expect from this channel. Number one, I'm going to do my best to try to speak in terms of my subjective experience. Another thing that I'm going to try my best to do in this channel is to start the video with some information about what I've learned and then give you my subjective experience around that information. The third thing that I'm going to really, really try and do in this channel is to just not take it too seriously, allow it to be funny, allow it to be humorous. I really just want to put the emphasis on that I am another student and that I am just learning, and I'm really not trying to be anything more or less than what I actually am. The fourth and final thing that I'm really going to try and do in these videos is to only give you information about things that have resonated with me, things that I have experienced, researched, and had a direct benefit in learning. I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there, or really subjective information that seems a little bit assertive in their beliefs, and that's not really something I want to do. If anything I say does not resonate with you, please don't put it in your pocket and carry it around all day. It's totally fine, and I'm not offended. And now that I've actually made the intro video, maybe I'll get courageous enough to post it online. I'm not really sure. I am a little bit nervous because these videos kind of put me in a vulnerable position. I get like really, really sensitive with feeling inferior. And if I get a really bad reception on these videos, it might actually scare me out of posting them. So if you do really resonate with the things that I'm saying, I don't care if you subscribe and I don't care if you like, but if you can please leave some kind of happy comment or maybe a question or just something that encourages me to continue doing these, that would be really, really helpful. So that is about all the time I'm going to give myself to do this. Thank you for allowing me to get kind of vulnerable in front of everybody. This information is really, really personal to me, and I am a little nervous about putting it out there, but if this information helps somebody, or if my story resonates with you in some way that you can identify, I really, really hope you follow me on this spiritual journey, and I really hope you get something out of it. Thank you so much for watching. You are amazing, and I love you.